Hey everybody, KMO here, and in today's video I'm going to run through this list of the 50 best sci-fi movies of the 2010s as compiled algorithmically by Rotten Tomatoes. I definitely do not agree with their rankings, but it is fun to have this list of 50 sci-fi films from the past decade. As you probably know, I'm quite the enjoyer and aficionado of science fiction films. So we'll start the list at the top, number 50. Z for Zachariah, 2015 film. Stars Chitwell Ejiofor, Margot Robbie, and Chris Pine. Three actors I really enjoy watching on screen. I haven't seen this one. And the genre, the setting, everything about this is right up my alley. There's no reason why I shouldn't have seen it, but I haven't seen it. Pacific Rim, 2013. Directed by Guillermo del Toro. It is a beautiful film. It is very stylish. It's got some good action in it. It's got some nice set pieces. I mean, if you want to watch giant robots fighting giant monsters, you can hardly do better than this. That said, it's a pretty silly film. A lot of the films that I don't like, I'm going to describe as dumb. This one, to be honest, is quite dumb, but I'm going to call it silly because I like it. Prometheus is dumb. Prometheus is such a mixed bag in that, you know, what Ridley Scott brings to a project like this is a visual sensibility. And the visuals in this are amazing. The effects are great. The production design is great. The cinematography is amazing. The story is dumb. And they brought in Damon Lindelof to script doctor it. And I'm sure he took out every smart piece that was in there and, you know, just dumbed it up. I wish I had never seen it in English. I wish that the film was only available in some language I don't speak, like French. So I could watch it in French, I could see it and see the beauty of it and imagine that it's really smart and just never have my nose rubbed in the fact that this is a really dumb film, really flawed effort by Ridley Scott. Well, again, the part that Ridley Scott is responsible for, he did well. It's a beautiful film. Now here's a film where the marketing department really shit the bed. Dredd. A film from 2012. I remember seeing the posters for it in the subway because I was living in New York at the time. And the title when it was in the cinema was Dredd 3D. It just looks so low budget, so, just such a retread and just so formulaic and by the numbers. I just had no interest in it. And at the time, I really didn't understand what an acting powerhouse Karl Urban is. At the time, I probably only knew him from Lord of the Rings. And you're thinking, who did he play in Lord of the Rings? Well, look it up. I'll give you a hint. It involves horses. But this film, starring Karl Urban, also Lena Headey from Game of Thrones is the big bad guy in this. This film is really tight. It is really well executed. Just from the get-go, the pacing is perfect. It has a definite setting. Like the setting, Mega City 1, it was filmed in South Africa. So when they're on the street, you can kind of tell that this is, I don't want to say the third world necessarily. It's certainly not the U.S. or Britain or someplace like that, even though it's supposed to be set in the U.S. But once they get inside this giant tower, this tenement block called Peach Trees, it's just perfect. And the stuff out on the street is good. It's just, clearly it was shot in South Africa or, someplace. Interstellar, 2014. This had a really stupid premise. The premise was just a non-starter. Because food crops are being destroyed by some disease, we have to leave the planet. What? Anyway, once you get past the dumb premise and you are invested in the action of the film, it's pretty compelling. To me, the best parts about it were the visuals and also all the stuff having to do with time weirdness near a black hole. The depiction of the black hole was really powerful. Well, I won't even try to describe the weird time stuff other than to say there is no time travel. The weird time stuff in this film is pretty scientifically grounded. Predestination. Don't think I saw it. If I did, it made no impression. The Double. Didn't see it. Godzilla, 2014. Yeah. Gareth Edwards had done a previous film about giant monsters called Monsters. And that's a much better film. But it didn't have the budget and it didn't have Godzilla. This sort of answers the question, well, what if you gave the director of Monsters a big budget and, turned him loose on a Godzilla movie? Well, this is what you get. Pretty restrained, actually. Frustratingly restrained for a lot of people. And also, Bryan Cranston was, in terms of the actors, he was the best thing about it, and he's not in it very much. Okay, there'll be names that recur time and again on this list, and one of them is J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams, he's kind of like Ridley Scott, and that the stuff that he does well, he does really, really well. The stuff that he doesn't do well, he can't be bothered with, or maybe it's deliberate. But J.J. Abrams, he works a lot with Damon Lindelof. I don't know if Lindelof had any hand in the writing of this one, but J.J. Abrams is really good at hitting the right emotional beats at the right moment in a film. He's good at pacing, and he's just good at emotional engagement. But that doesn't have to come at the cost of moronic plot development. And yet, in J.J. Abrams' films, it almost always does. I'll say more about that the next time we hit one of his films in this list. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Okay, I love this trilogy. It is gorgeous. The names of the first two films are bad. Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Which comes first? I don't know. I like the middle film the best. I think this is the first one, 2011. I like the middle film the best. It has some amazing, iconic imagery and moments in it. But really, I like all three. They're all very well done. Really an amazing showcase for performance capture, and how far that has come since Lord of the Rings. Robot and Frank, didn't see it, not tempted to see it. Ready Player One, an adequate adaptation of the novel. For me, the novel was a whole bunch of fun because I grew up in the 80s and I was a geek into video games and Dungeons and Dragons and that sort of thing. And in the novel, really, it's a novel about 1980s culture. And they expanded it to encompass several decades for this film, for the film adaptation. And it was adequate. We'll just say that. It wasn't a bad film. And a lot of people, are very critical of the novel. So if you didn't like the novel, I don't know what your opinion would be of the film. For me, the film was nice to look at. The source material was just so much better. Coherence. This is a really cool film. You probably haven't heard of anybody who's in it. I can't name anything by this director other than this film. But, apparently it was his writer-directorial debut. Anyway, it's a small film about a group of people just gathered for a celebration, and weird stuff starts happening. It's got a very dense plot, requires almost no special effects. It's just, 5 or 6 actors in a dining room reacting to the premise. But it's really good, and definitely worth a second, possibly even a third viewing. Kong Skull Island. So I guess this is the sequel to Godzilla, Gareth Edwards' Godzilla. It's okay. It even has Brie Larson in it, and she didn't bother me in this. It's a pretty forgettable film, but, doesn't step on my toes at all. I'm fine with it. Upstream Color. For me, if I was ranking these films, this would definitely be in the top 10. This is the second film by Shane Carruth. The first one is called Primer. It's not on this list because I think it came out in the previous decade. But like Primer, it is a dense film, and it doesn't stop to explain things to you. It will require some either very close attention paying on your part, or seeking out some, an explanation online after you've seen it, or, multiple viewings, or all of the above. It demands a lot of the viewer, but it really pays off. There's a scene in this film where the two lead actors, the lead actor is Shane Carruth, the director, but he and his leading lady they're both caught up in this weird science fiction premise, which has fallen into the hands of criminals, and they're both the victims of this thing. And for reasons I could not begin to explain, they are psychically and emotionally connected to a pig. And the pig has a litter of piglets, and somebody takes the piglets, puts them in a gunny sack, throws them in a river, and drowns them. The pig is clearly, distraught at the loss of her piglets. And these two people who are psychically and emotionally connected to the pig for reasons they don't understand, and I'm not even sure they know it's a pig that they're connected to, but they're suddenly frantically searching through the house looking for what? They don't know why they're so frantic to find something, and they don't know what it is they need to find, but they know they have to find it. This film demonstrates that you can have a really smart plot and really engaging, emotional hooks in the film, and that the two can work simultaneously. You don't have to abandon intelligence to make an emotionally engaging film, J.J. Abrams. Next, Midnight Special. Didn't see it. High Life. This is from this year. This is a very low-budget film. It's a very sexy film. It plays around with a lot of sexual taboos. It's set on a spaceship where several prisoners are being experimented on while they are, rocketing away from the Earth at possibly relativistic speeds. This film simply did not have the budget to deliver on its setting. I mean, it didn't have what it needed to bring, to adequately visualize this film. The acting is good. The writing is good. It's worth watching, but it really needs to be reskinned with some, adequate graphics because it just lacks them. Marjorie Prime, didn't see it. Under the Skin. I've only seen this once. I'd like to see it again. It's a very disturbing psychological sci-fi thriller. Scarlett Johansson is an alien who is luring men back to a house to be devoured by some huge alien presence. And somewhere along the line, she kind of loses track of what she's supposed to be doing. But it's filmed in Scotland, and a lot of the people that she, seduces, like she just drives around in this van and talks to people on the street, trying to pick up the right guys, find somebody who she can lure back to the house. And a lot of the interactions with the people on the street were unscripted, and they're not actors. She just, there was a hidden camera in the van. She pulls up and starts talking to these guys, and you get to hear some really, really thick, authentic Scottish accents in this film. And if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil the end for you. It is atmospheric and gripping and uncomfortable and really stylish and cool. Upgrade, 2018. This is a low-budget film. The premise is pretty boilerplate. I mean, it's what's good about this film is all in the execution. There's a guy who has an AI basically controlling his nervous system. And so when he unleashes the AI and lets it go to town and fight for him using his body, there's really inventive camera work and fight choreography. And this film does a lot with a little. It looks like a low-budget film, but, in the moments where it's doing its thing, its unique thing, it does it really well. Star Trek Into Darkness, J.J. Abrams. Okay, I liked 2009's Star Trek, the first of the new Trek, JJ Trek, or Kelvinverse Trek. I really liked the cast, and I was willing to overlook the J.J. Abrams stupidity. And it's on display in all three films in this franchise. But when I saw Star Trek Into Darkness in the theater, I saw it with my kids. And this was 6 years ago, so my kids were younger, far less critical than they are now. And I think we all enjoyed it together, and it was a pleasant experience. So I liked it. But it doesn't hold up to any sort of critical scrutiny at all. This is a really, really stupid film. Just like every other J.J. Abrams film, it's just dumb as a bag of rocks. But at least I was able to enjoy it once. Before I thought about it, I just took it in as, a cast that I like and colorful action set pieces. I enjoyed it. Attack the Block. I hear good things, but I never saw it. The Hunger Games. There's a lot going on in these novels, and a lot of what's in the novels makes it onto the screen, and I like lots of it. Other bits of it I don't like so much. For me, each novel was a little worse than the one before it, and parts of the third novel are pretty unbearable, just in Katniss and the dark depths of her depression and just struggling with her, self-hatred. That went on way too long, and too much of that gets into the films. But this first film is pretty good. I liked it. The Lobster. I hear good things. Didn't see it. Star Trek Beyond. Okay, so unlike Star Trek Into Darkness, I'd had a few years to dwell on just how bad Into Darkness really was, and so I wasn't cutting Beyond any slack, even when I was in the theater. And I saw it by myself, so I wasn't with my kids. It wasn't a group outing. It was just me going to see a film, and I hated it from the get-go. I won't dwell on so much why I hate it, other than the one thing I'll say is that if you're in space in a J.J. Abrams movie, there is no space. It's full of stuff. The Enterprise has to dodge and weave just to avoid hitting all the crap that's in space in this film. But in the real world, if you're standing on an asteroid in the asteroid belt, you probably can't see any other asteroids with the naked eye. There's a lot of space between stuff in space, unless you're in a J.J. Abrams film. Inception, 2010. I saw this in an IMAX theater in North Carolina with good friends. Really enjoyed watching it while I was watching it. I have not revisited it since then. It's got a great cast. I can take Leonardo DiCaprio or leave him. I don't much care. But Ken Watanabe, Ellen Page is in it. Tom Hardy's in it. Very stylish, good-looking film by Christopher Nolan. As far as I remember, it's pretty good. Liked it. The World's End. Apparently it's comedy. Haven't seen it. Another Hunger Games film. I think I've commented enough on those. Source Code. I saw it. It didn't leave much of an impression on me. So I don't really have much to say about it, other than directed by Duncan Jones, his previous film, Moon, with Sam Rockwell. Love that film. Love it. Star Wars Rogue One, or Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. This is the only Disney Star Wars movie that I unambiguously like. I don't have to qualify my saying I like it with anything. I just like it. I recognize it has some flaws, but I like it. I can't say that about any other Disney Star Wars film. Ad Astra came out just this year. I didn't see it. It looks kind of dumb. High budget dumb, but dumb. And the guys over at the TV station saw it together, and they said, yeah, it was dumb. Annihilation. If I were putting this list together, this would be number one. For me, this is the best film, science fiction film of the past decade. It's all atmospheric with beautiful visuals. Nothing is spelled out for you. At the end, it is still very ambiguous, what has happened. But it is just, for me anyway, so engaging. The acting is amazing. Even Natalie Portman, who I normally don't like very much, she really brings it in this role. It's got, what's his name? Oscar Isaac, who's also in Star Wars. But he's great in this. Directed, and I think also written. Well, it's written by Jeff Vandermeer. It's adapted from the novel, but I think Alex Garland wrote the screenplay. But he also directed it. So remember this name, Alex Garland. I think he wrote 28 Days Later. And, well, I won't go through his whole filmography, but his name will come up again in this list. But for me, this is the best film on this whole list. Loved it. 10 Cloverfield Lane. I saw it. It was okay. It was not written or filmed to be a sequel to Cloverfield. It was turned into a sequel to Cloverfield after the fact. Bumblebee. I didn't see it. I heard it was much better than the Michael Bay Transformer films, although that's not saying a whole lot. Ex Machina. This also definitely in the top 5. Again, written and directed by Alex Garland. He writes and now directs smart stories. And this is definitely one of them. And, again, Oscar Isaac. Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. They couldn't figure out what to call this film, which probably contributed to its absolute dismal failure at the box office. But, man, what an amazing film. It's not an adaptation of a Philip K. Dick story, but it sure feels like one. It's actually an adaptation of a comic book, I think a Japanese comic book. All You Need Is Kill, I think is what it's called. I never read it, but I really, really love this film. It is good on every level. It is a smart screenplay, great actors in it. It is well directed. It is well executed just on every level. It's just a really excellent film. Looper 2012 is an adequate film. It's fine. It's not bad. It's not good. It's fine. Rian Johnson, who would bring us The Last Jedi. I wish this film didn't exist. I wish that Rian Johnson had a really satisfying career in insurance adjustment or, I don't know, writing jingles for commercials. Do they even do jingles anymore? I mean, it is this film which made The Last Jedi a thing. And I wish The Last Jedi wasn't a thing. All right, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I think this is the middle film. And this is the one that I really liked in this series. Although they're all good. All three are good. But this one has got just amazing, iconic visual moments. Her. Love this film. Oh, this is such a good film. Scarlett Johansson, Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Spike Jonze. I just love this film. I've only seen it once, but man, it really stuck with me. Snowpiercer, I've seen repeatedly because it's so much fun. It's about attempts to forestall global warming, which go too far and basically throw the Earth into a super bitter ice age. And the only people left alive on the planet are on a train, which is basically some sort of perpetual motion machine on a track that goes around the world. And the train takes exactly a year to go around the track once. So they go through the same tunnel at midnight on New Year's Eve every year. And, it's an allegory. It's a class struggle allegory. The low-class people live at the back of the train. The high-class, powerful, important people live at the front of the train. There is a revolution. And Chris Evans, Captain America, he has to wear all these baggy clothes to hide how big and built he is because it wouldn't work for this setting. I mean, he's one of the poor people in the back of the train. He's going to be a skinny little wretch. There's no way he's going to look like Captain America, so they had to hide that. Usually it goes the other way in films, They're showing off the sculpted body of the lead rather than hiding it. The Martian. This shows what Ridley Scott can do when he has good source material. This is just an engaging film, and it looks amazing. So I haven't read the novel, but, Damon Lindelof, nowhere in sight. This is Ridley Scott bringing his visual brilliance to good material. Blade Runner 2049. Speaking of visual brilliance, Denis Villeneuve, who's got one other film in this list, he's directing the new Dune. It's going to be two movies to adapt the first novel in the series. The first one comes out next year. It's going to have an all-star cast. If it looks half as good as Blade Runner 2049, it will be a classic. It may well fail at the box office, as most of his films seem to do, but it will be a gorgeous failure. Sorry to bother you. I haven't seen it, although I've heard good things, so I can't really say anything about it, but this is one I will be seeing eventually. War for the Planet of the Apes, third film in the series. It's good. I enjoyed it. I have no criticisms of it. It's not the third. It's not the middle film, though. I mean, the middle film is just, for me, that was the pinnacle. Gravity, didn't see it. Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, directed by J.J. Abrams. This film is so stupid. I hate this movie. I don't hate it as much as the next one, Star Wars The Last Jedi, because Star Wars The Last Jedi goes out of its way to, one, wreck the trilogy, because J.J. Abrams is good at the beginnings of stories. He's not very good at the ends of stories, but he's good at the beginnings of stories. And he, basically constructed a structure. There were threads to be continued in the next film, and Rian Johnson didn't continue them. He just drove the series into the ground such that they basically had to start over again for the third movie. But this first one, it made a bunch of money, and a lot of people really like it. I can't stand it. It is so stupid. The rebellion won. They destroyed the Death Star, they killed the Emperor, they defeated the Empire, and they created a new republic. That's where we are at the beginning of this next trilogy. That's where we should be. Leia should be at the head of an enormous army, not still, this ragtag group of resistance fighters. This just reset the board to the beginning of Star Wars A New Hope. And that's not the story we needed to tell. It's not the story they needed to tell. It's not the story that the fans deserved. But a lot of people really respond to those J.J. Abrams emotional beats, and this one made a lot of money. Arrival, another film by Denis Villeneuve. Beautiful film. I know some people thought it was pretentious. I thought it was just skillful and subtle and smart. It was a smart film. Star Wars The Last Jedi. Really, given where The Force Awakens ends, there's nothing good to be done with it, really. But you could at least have, we were promised Luke Skywalker. This film gives us, it's the monkey's paw delivery of your wish. It's like, oh, you wanted Luke Skywalker? Here he is. We're going to make him look like a total dick. A useless piece of filth, cowardly, just with no redeeming qualities until the very end, when he does something which I guess, it counts as a self-sacrifice, but man, this film is so bad on every level except visually. It's got the Industrial Light and Magic machine behind it. It looks beautiful, but man, what a dumb film. And, not only dumb, but this one was deliberately insulting to the fan base, the existing fan base, and to the legacy characters. It just rubbed their noses in the shit and put the new characters, the new Disney icon characters up on a pedestal. Well, the female ones anyway. The male characters all just had to be bumbling and stupid and, flawed from every angle. They had to look bad. And number 1 on this list, Mad Max Fury Road. Now, I don't think of this as a science fiction film, although, it clearly is. It takes place in the future, and it is a post-apocalyptic film, like all the other Mad Max films. I liked it. I have nothing bad to say about this film. If there's any criticism of it at all that I have, it's just that it doesn't fit the chronology of the previous films in this series. It seems to be a soft reboot of some sort. But, love Tom Hardy. Charlize Theron was very good in it. And, this film didn't have a script. This was conceived and refined via storyboards from the get-go. Because it's just such an action film. There's very little dialogue in it. It's all about the logistics, and the stunts. A marvelous film. I love it. Okay, so this is definitely not how I would rank these films. I'm not going to, try to rank all 50 of them. I'll just say, what the handful of my favorites are, and you've probably caught that already. Mad Max, definitely up there. The second Planet of the Apes movie, visually, Blade Runner 2049. Her, very powerful film, and I think an important film because, it's grappling with our emerging relationship with artificial intelligence. Live, Die, Repeat, or Edge of Tomorrow, whichever you want to call it. An excellent film, just so well executed and smart and well acted, and just, everything falls into place with that film. Ex Machina, another, I would say, important film about our emerging relationship with artificial intelligence. Again, Alex Garland film. I will go see any Alex Garland film knowing nothing about it other than he wrote or directed it. Annihilation, this is the top of my list. Absolutely love it. Rogue One, liked that. And I guess the only other film that really makes the winner's circle for me, where is it, is Dredd. Prometheus, if I could watch it in another language or with the sound off, it's just gorgeous. But, Ridley Scott, not only does he not write, he's a visual guy, he doesn't have the judgment to know a good script or a bad script when he reads it, apparently, which is just a shame. All right, there we are. Science fiction films of the last decade. Some of them really, really, really good. Some of them really, really, really dumb. Most of the super dumb ones, the ones that are, dumb in just an insulting way, brought to you by J.J. Abrams. Or Rian Johnson, who took the baton from J.J. Abrams and then threw it over his shoulder, like Luke Skywalker up on that cliff. Okay, that's all. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.